Today I'm going to do a little chick stitching with the blanket stitch or buttonhole stitch. I wanted to show you what it's going to look like when we're done. Basically, it's going to look like this little chick here. This chick I made yesterday and it's a bit too tiny, so I'm going to make another one today. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch around inside with the blanket stitch. And so I have to set up my machine. I set up my machine in the same way as I always do. Let me show you that. All right, I set up the machine for what on my machine is called, it's 1329. It's a simple buttonhole stitch or blanket stitch. For this, I wanted the stitch length to be 2.0, the stitch width to be 2.0, and notice I set my needle over to the far right position. I have put, well, before I leave this screen, let me show you, this is my tension. I always set my tension down when I'm using especially decorative threads, because I want to keep my bobbin with a white and I don't want that bobbin to show. Here's my needle area. Notice I have this open toe faceplate so that I can stitch a zigzag type stitch. And I have my foot that's open toed so that I can stitch that kind of stitch. I'm going to stick this, I've picked my thread already. I'm going to stick my chick in under the, so that the fabric is underneath, and I'm going to take one stitch down, one stitch up so that I can pull the bobbin thread up. There we go. Now the bobbin thread is up, and remember I am going to just stitch around the edge, trying to keep my stitch perpendicular. It goes down straight, and then notice I'm turning it just ever so slightly to keep the, I need a better pointer here, to keep my stitch that goes across. I want it to, I kind of look at this back, the back of the foot. That's a good indicator of how well you're doing keeping your stitch perpendicular there. So I'm going to just keep going around, taking one stitch in. Sometimes I have to lift and move. One thing I did not mention earlier, you might be able to see, I put a little sizing on my white background. I fused the chick down, and then I added a lightweight stabilizer on the back. I just pinned it on, so that's what these pins are about. I'm going to stitch a little farther, and then I will show you something else. Chick stitching part 2. As you can see now, I'm getting pretty close to this little point on his wing. So when I started to get close there, I take my stitch down just slightly. Instead of a 2.0 going in, it's going to be a 1.6. And I also probably will take down my stitch length at the same amount. So 1 point, see how it's a little smaller. When I get towards the end, it's kind of tricky. Now the very point is going to go right in and back out. I will keep it at this little tiny stitch until right about here. Then I'm going to take it back up to 2.0 and continue on. as you can see, I'm going to go opposite direction around. That's where it's sitting. But let me show you first. I have changed the width and length of my stitches because I want them to show. I changed the width of the stitch to 5.0, the length to 4.0, and my tension is still set way down so that the bobbin stays in the back. All right, so once again, we're going to start by just putting that needle down, bringing the needle up, and I have to get my bobbin thread pulled up. Now, notice where my needle is. My needle thinks it's ready for the second part of the stitch. It's in the middle. I don't want to start there, so I have to set my machine, go back and tell it to start at the very beginning. Okay, so we're going to go in, out, down, out, down, out, down, out. When I get to his armpit, I'm going to stop because I don't want to put it on his wings. So I'm going to lift and pull out, clip, and then I will do the same thing. I will start back up here on the head. Of course, I have to put my needle down again, bring it back up, just like I did a minute ago, and go around his head in the same way, backwards, going around his head backwards. Finished. This is chick stitching, tying off the stitches. When I started the stitching, remember I pulled both threads to the top. So now I'm going to need my easy threader needle, and I'm going to put both threads into the hole, and I'm going to push that to the back, and I'm going to tie a little knot in them when I get them to come back here. Up. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Now on the end stitches, here's an end stitch. He's only got one side up at the top. So there's two things I can do. I can pull the bobbin thread up and bring the top thread to the back. Sometimes I do it that way. Sometimes I go to the other side and use my easy threader to pull it through. Either way, whichever is your preference, but you do need to get those stitches, those extra threads to the back so that you can tie them off. Okay, so then I'll just tie these off, and then it'll be time to just draw a couple little eyes and a little mouth on my cute little chick.